way through that period of time. The team has also taken the approach of reducing the number of sailings, and I think that was reported to earlier select committees. So we have more outage periods for the maintenance of each ferry as they age. There's no doubt that as a ferry gets older, it will require more maintenance. We have had the international experts in looking at the asset management, done a detailed asset management plan for the fleet as a whole and for each individual ferry. Every component of the ferry that has the potential to fail has been taken through what's known as a bow tie analysis, which looks at potential causes of failure, the actual event, and then the remedies for those, introducing what's known as fracas, which is a systems engineering approach to each of these matters. So insofar as is practical, with the fleet we have a very sophisticated asset management system in place. The fact is that they are old ferries, and therefore there will be, they just have a greater potential prospect of failure in certain areas. Now, those failures are normally minor and they are detected, and you simply have to cancel a sailing. It's not great in terms of customer, but basically you're doing that, you're finding the fault and fixing it. And the one in the Sounds the other night was a classic example of a fault being found, detected, hold for a while, you fix it and you sail and you're fine again.
Okay, what is...
Tony, can I just say, this is David Gordon, and this is Chris McKenzie. I should have pointed out which was which.
Sorry, I got that from your written introduction.
Well, it's there, but you can't tell just by that.
And one was size, the other was the other. But anyhow,
Just trying to be helpful.
Thank you, Minister.
We've seen Dave at least many times, and Chris, congratulations.
Can I ask, please, what is the budget for the maintenance of the current fleet?
I cannot give you that off the top of my head, but I do know that we are appearing in front of this committee in a week's time.
Okay, so you'll have that available.
And that answer will be available. And Duncan Roy, who is the head of our island, will have those detailed numbers.
No problem. Thank you. Minister, we've just heard the reality is that there will be a reduction in sailings. There will be, from time to time, with a reduced number of vessels in the fleet, things that do happen, unfortunately. What is your expectation in terms of contingency to provide little to no disruption to the public around being able to use a resilient Cook Strait ferry service?
The ability to provide no disruption in the circumstance which we're operating, it would be just utterly over-optimistic. But there are contingencies to handle the difficulties we might face in the interim when we get ready for 2029.
What do you see those as?
Well, you don't answer.
Yeah, look, certainly.
No. I'd like, this is a serious issue around, contingency planning. As Minister, what do you see as your expectation around contingency? Do you expect, for example, that the public should have to put up with ongoing regular disruption to service?
One of the essential natures of leadership is that you pick people to do the job that you can trust to do the job, and you trust them to do the job, and that's why I've got Mr. Gordon here to answer the question.
Okay.
I think there's 2 points to do. Firstly, New Zealand's coming down to a 4-fleet ferry across the strait. That means our relationship with Bluebridge has to be very strong. We have to ensure, and it's a mutual thing. We can't have a situation where 2 of the 4 ships for the Cook Strait are in dry dock at the same time. So we will work and have worked closely with Bluebridge to ensure that we've got our dry dock and wet dock set up so that we're not at a stage where there's only 2 ferries operating. The next thing is both ourselves and Bluebridge have disruptions on occasions. We have a service which we do work with each other and say, if you've got an issue, then we'll take your customers and vice versa. It is an area where you'd call there is strong competition and sensible cooperation where there are events that can mutually affect us.
So an overt reliance on Bluebridge?
No, look, I think that's putting words in my mouth. We are basically, there are 4 ferries crossing the strait. The 2 operators cooperate in terms of outages, and we look after each other's customers in the event of there being an issue. It's just sensible commercial behaviour.
Can I, Minister, ask you about the provision for cancellation costs of the existing contract? Has there been a conclusion reached in terms of the repudiation of that existing contract?
I think I've said for some considerable time that we're in negotiations, and until we know the details, it would be most unwise to say anything about that.
So you can confirm that those negotiations have not concluded then? They're still ongoing?
Well, most certainly, that's a fact, yes.
Okay.
However, can I just say, reality was we began in May of 2020 with a $401 billion proposal for 2 ferries. And when I finally got back, it was passed on Treasury's calculations and others, passing $4 billion. And where the cost of the ferries was going to be less than 20% of the total proposal. And so we were staring down the face of a Tasmania. We got the ferries, we've got no infrastructure.
I note that, you
How many more you got?
one more on this
Okay,
one.
yeah, cool.
I know that your comments that are written here talk about the previous government on track to 4 billion, but it wasn't actually at 4 billion, was it?
It was at 3.1 at the time, but the Treasury's forecast said it could go past 4 to 4.2 billion.
If decisions were taken by that government at the time, those decisions were not taken, and so it's not accurate to suggest that that was something that could be taken.
No, the government had made the decisions. It had contracted for 2 ferries. The consequence was that the infrastructure would never been ready in the first place and was going to blow out way beyond any cost told to anybody in the public at the time. That's why the ferries were going to be, on the worst calculation, less than 20% of the total cost. We went out in May of 2020, when I was there as a minister, to buy 2 ferries and come back to find we've bought a whole infrastructure cost with no accountability as to how we're going to get there and who's going to pay for it. And I'm actually astonished that anyone is seeking now at this belated hour to defend that decision.
Well, there's no defence. It's just pointing to the fact that, in your own language, you're saying was on track. This is a government that likes to talk about things being on track.
This time it's got a reality to it.
I guess there's an issue of where tracks go to. Can I just ask a couple of...
I'm not sure how much you picked about that, but Gavin, the first part of the select committee must not have been live streamed because it just felt like we entered a conversation midfield.
Yeah, I mean, all I got is that they were talking about ferries. I'm just trying to find a timeline for the ferry debacle. So
I also gave you had to go back out to the street to get your road code.
well, actually, I couldn't be bothered putting the road cone back last night. It was too wet. I'm not gonna put a lone road code out when it's raining. I'm not a monster. But yes, I'll see if I can get a ferry timeline.
Okay, so should we hear what Uncle Andy's got to ask?